Hi, welcome back. In this video, we'll be covering the last part of my three-part series on the Form 1040. Before we jump in, let's quickly review the overall layout of the Form 1040. Part 1 covers your personal information, name, filing status, and dependents. Part 2 covers income and adjusted gross income, everything from wages, interest, and dividends to your deductions that determine AGI. And Part 3, which we'll focus on in this video, brings it all together. This is where you calculate your actual tax, apply any credits, record payments and withholdings, and finally see whether you're getting a refund or owe the IRS. So let's walk through part 3 of the 1040 step by step, starting with line 16. Line 16 is where you enter your total tax before any credits or additional taxes. The label says tax. See instructions because there are a few possible forms that feed into this line. We see checkbox for 8814, 4972, and then a blank box. Let's break down what those mean. Form 8814, that's the parent's election to report child's interest and dividends. If you choose to include your child's investment income on your own return, instead of filing a separate one for them, you'll check this box and attach Form 8814. Form 4972, that's the tax on lump sum distributions. This form is for special situations where you received a one-time lump sum payment from a retirement plan and want to use a special tax calculation method. And then we see a blank box. That's for any other form that calculates a special type of tax. Most people leave this blank. Okay, so what do we enter on line 16? Well, line 16 is based on line 15, but you need the IRS tables or worksheets to calculate the correct tax amount. Unless you're using one of those special forms, the tax that goes on line 16 usually comes from the tax table or tax computational worksheet. Both are found in the 1040 instructions. Just search online for Form 1040 instructions. So let's say you're married filing jointly and your taxable income on line 15 is $27,000. Open the tax table in the Form 1040 instructions. Find the row for income at least $27,000 but less than $27,050. Move across to the married filing jointly column. The table shows $2,779. That $2,779 is the total federal income tax you owe on your taxable income of $27,000 for the married filing jointly status. It already includes the progressive tax rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, etc. that apply to each portion of your income. Normally, you would use the tax table for incomes under $100,000 or the tax computation worksheet for income of $100,000 or more. But if you have qualified dividends or long-term capital gains, your income is taxed at special lower rates, 0%, 15%, 20%, instead of the regular income tax brackets. That's why the IRS gives you a different worksheet called the Qualified Dividends and Capital Gain Tax Worksheet, also found in the Form 1040 instructions. It recalculates your tax to account for those lower rates on the portion of your income that came from qualified dividends, typically from stocks held over 60 days, long-term capital gains, assets held over a year. Here's an example of how that works. Alright, moving on now to line 17. Line 17 pulls in other taxes you owe that aren't directly calculated from your taxable income. These come from Schedule 2, line 3, which includes things like the alternative minimum tax, AMT, or excessive advance premium tax credit, repayments for health insurance under the marketplace. Most taxpayers leave this blank unless they have those special situations. Line 18 is just adding line 16 and 17. The total on line 18 represents your pre-credit total tax liability, the amount you owe before any credits are applied. Line 19 is where you enter the child tax credit or credit for other dependents, which comes from Schedule 8812. This credit directly reduces your tax. It's worth up to $2,000 per child under 17 and $500 for other qualifying dependents. Let's say you have 2 kids under 17. That's up to $4,000 total in child tax credit. You'll list that here on line 19 to reduce your tax. Line 20 is where you'll add other non-refundable credits from Schedule 3, such as the education credits, American Opportunity and Lifetime Learning, or the foreign tax credit. These credits also reduce your tax, but only down to 0. You can't get a refund from them. Alright, line 21 is just adding line 19 and 20 together. This gives you your total non-refundable credits. These are credits that can lower your tax to 0, but not below 0. Next we have line 22. That's just subtracting line 21 from line 18. If the result is 0 or less, enter 0. This line shows what your tax is after subtracting the credits you qualify for. Line 23, other taxes, including self-employment tax. If you're self-employed, you'll see additional tax here from Schedule 2, line 21. That includes the self-employment tax, household employment tax, or the 10% penalty on early IRA withdrawals. This line basically adds any extra taxes that aren't covered by the main income tax calculation. Line 24 is just adding line 22 and 23. That total on line 24 is your total tax. It represents the final amount of tax you owe for the year before considering any payments or withholding. So at this point, you've calculated your final tax liability. In the next part of the form, payments and refund, we'll see how much you've already paid through withholding or estimated payments, and whether you'll get a refund or owe the IRS. Line 25 is where you enter all the federal income tax that's already been withheld during the year. This includes taxes withheld from your job, side income, or even certain retirement payments. For line 25A, you'll find your federal income tax withheld on your W-2 form in box 2. That's the amount your employer already sent to the IRS during the year. If you have multiple W-2s, add the box from each one together and enter the total on line 25A. Line 25B, that's from forms 1099, freelance, contract, or investment income. If you received any form 1099s like 1099 NEC, 1099 MISC, miscellaneous, or 1099 interest, INT, look for a box labeled Federal Income Tax Withheld. It's often box 4 on those forms. Add up the federal withholding from all your 1099s and enter the total on line 25B. Line 25C, other forms, retirement, stock sales, etc. This covers any other form that shows federal tax withheld, such as Form 1099R, retirement distributions, typically box 4, Form 1099B, broker stock sales, Form W2G, gambling winnings, also box 4. Then you want to add up 25A, 25B, plus 25C, and the total goes on line 25D. That's your total federal income tax withheld for the year. This is the total federal tax already paid through withholding. Alright, moving on to line 26. If you made any quarterly estimated payments during the year, mostly common for freelancers or self-employed people, you'll also include any overpayment from last year's tax return that you choose to apply toward this year's taxes. Say you're self-employed and made 4 quarterly payments of $1,000 each. That's $4,000 total you report here on line 26. Line 27, Earned Income Credit. This is a refundable credit for low to moderate income workers. Your tax software will usually check automatically to see if you qualify, or if you use the IRS EITC Assistant online. If you do qualify, you'll enter it here. Alright, line 28, Additional Child Tax Credit. If your child tax credit on line 19 was more than your tax owed, the leftover portion can still be refunded here as the additional child tax credit. This comes from Schedule 8812, Part 2. Line 29, American Opportunity Credit. If you or your dependent paid qualified college tuition, you may get the American Opportunity Credit claimed on Form 8863. Part of it is non-refundable, which reduces your tax, and part of it is refundable, can increase your refund. The refundable portion goes here. Line 30 used to be for the Recovery Rebate Credit during COVID, but for 2024 it's reserved, so just leave it blank. Line 31, this line pulls in other refundable credits from Schedule 3, things like the premium tax credit for marketplace health insurance or the fuel tax credit. Line 32 is just adding lines 27, 28, 29, and 31. These represent refundable credits and other payments you can get back even if you owe no tax. Line 33, total payments. This is adding lines 25D, 26, and 32. This is the total amount of tax you've already paid or earned back through refundable credits. Alright, moving on to the refund section. Line 34, overpayment. This is where you compare what you paid to what you owe. If your total payments on line 33 are more than your total tax on line 24. The difference is your overpayment, the amount the IRS owes you back. That number goes here on line 34. And here's a quick example. On line 35A, if you want direct deposit, fill in 35B through 35D with your routing number, account number, and check the checking or savings type box. Direct deposit is the fastest option. The IRS recommends it. If you prefer a paper check, just leave those boxes blank. You could also split or redirect your refund using Form 8888, and make sure to check the box that says, if Form 8888 is attached, check here. Line 36. Here you can choose to apply part or all of your refund to next year's taxes instead of receiving it now. Some self-employed or high-income filers do this to prepay their estimated taxes for the next year. Line 37, amount you owe. If your total tax on line 24 is more than your total payments on line 33, the difference goes on line 37. That's what you owe the IRS. You can pay electronically at irs.gov/payments. Mail a check or use the IRS Direct Pay from your bank account. Try to pay by the filing deadline, April 15, to avoid penalties and interest. To figure out whether you owe or get a refund, compare these two lines. Line 24, the total tax, and line 33, the total payments. If line 33 is greater than line 24, you've overpaid, meaning you'll get a refund. If line 33 is less than line 24, you've underpaid, meaning you'll owe the IRS. So if you're getting a refund, you'll skip line 37 entirely, because the amount you owe section only applies when your total payments are less than your total tax. If nothing owed or refunded, leave lines 34 and 37 blank. Alright, now we have the last line item here, number 38. That's the estimated tax penalty, and it's a line many people overlook. You might owe this penalty if you didn't pay enough tax throughout the year, either through withholding or estimated payments. The IRS expects you to pay taxes as you earn income, not all at once in April. If you underpaid, especially as a self-employed worker or investor, the IRS may calculate a penalty for underpayment of estimated tax. Most tax software will figure this automatically using Form 2210, but you can also request a waiver if you meet certain exceptions, like having uneven income, retiring, or facing an unusual circumstance. Finally, we've come to the last section of Part 3, the signatures. Third-party designee. If you check yes, you'll list a third-party designee, like your accountant or tax preparer, along with a phone number and PIN. This lets the IRS speak with the person directly if they have any questions about your return. Most people filing on their own leave this section blank. Once you've reviewed all your numbers and confirm everything is accurate, the final step is to sign and date your return. If you're filing jointly, both spouses must sign, even if only one had income. Next to your signature, enter your occupation and the date. You'll also see spaces for your phone number and email address. Those are optional. The IRS only uses them if they need to contact you about your return. If you're filing electronically, your tax software will use a self-selected PIN instead of a handwritten signature. The PIN is a 6-digit number issued by the IRS to help protect you from tax-related identity theft, and make sure that no one else can file a tax return using your social security number. You only need to fill this in if the IRS already sent you one, or if you voluntarily requested one. If you don't already have one, but want that extra layer of security, you can get it directly from the IRS website at irs.gov/get-NIP-PIN. The IRS gives you a new PIN each year to use when you file your return. Finally, at the very bottom is the paid prepare use only section. This part is only for professional tax preparers. If someone else prepared and filed your return for you, it includes their name, firm, address, PTIN, that's the preparer tax identification number, and signature. If you did your own tax return, whether by hand or using tax software, you can ignore this section completely. It's only for paid preparers like accountants or tax pros who fill out returns for clients. And that completes part 3 of Form 1040 of this video series. We've covered how to calculate your tax, apply credits, record your payments, find out whether you're getting a refund or owe the IRS, and how to finalize your return with your signature.